Hello and welcome to the Analytics Edge, sponsored by NetSpring.
The Analytics Edge is a podcast about real-world stories of innovation. We're here to explore how data-driven insights can help you make better business decisions. I'm your host, Thomas Dong, VP of Marketing at NetSpring. And for today's episode, my co-host is Vijay Ganesan, co-founder and CEO at NetSpring. Thank you for joining me on the show today, Vijay.
Great to be here, Tom. Really looking forward to talking to these two guys.
In today's episode, we'll be exploring several topics that are top of mind for CIOs, from the promise of spatial computing to AI and data strategies. We're joined by two very special guests, Bask Iyer, the former CIO of VMware, Dell, Juniper Networks, Honeywell, and GlaxoSmithKline, and longtime advisor to Zoom, and Awinash Sinha, Zoom's current CIO. Zoom, of course, grew to global mainstream prominence during the COVID-19 pandemic, but had already for years firmly established themselves as the most reliable and easiest to use and set up web conferencing tool. Bask, Awinash, we're delighted to have you both with us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Bask and Awinash, thank you so much for being on the show. You guys are thought leaders in this space, lots of extensive experience in the business. So really looking forward to hearing your thoughts today.
Thank you, Vijay.
All right, let's start with Apple's launch of their Vision Pro augmented reality headset. And with this launch, AR continues to hold great promise for transforming the customer experience and how consumers will interact with businesses and products in the future. Bask, how should CIOs and data leaders be thinking about AR or VR?
I think personally, I made the mistake of betting against Apple a few times. When they came up with the headsets, I thought, how much can you do with the headphones? Headphones is a headphone, and can you make it physically better than a physical headset? I was wrong. And so I've been wrong on all these counts. I was just blown away with experience. I think Apple has focused on experience, and sometimes corporate CIOs don't care much about experience. They're getting into practicality of things. This product actually allows you to dream a little bit. And, you could only imagine version 2 and 3 of this and how much value it will be to even industries, whether it's medical, healthcare, to help doctors remotely diagnose and do things, or, like engineering in a company like aerospace companies, they can remotely wear this and inspect several things. So I'm not going to bet against it. It is expensive. But, I never thought I would buy an expensive phone. I never thought I would pay $1,000 for a phone. And here we are. Every other year, we pay $1,000 to get the next version of the phone. So I would recommend the CIOs. CIOs, as are risk averse. Generally, they wait till the technology is all proven out and wait till somebody else has done a use case and case study before they experiment. I would urge them to take a chance and go forward. And then you create the use case. Don't wait for somebody else. Don't follow. Be a kind of a path leader. It's not that expensive to get for a corporation to try a few things up. I'm excited. It's a good toy, but it's going to be very useful very soon.
Avinash, one of the use cases Apple is featuring is meetings. And obviously, Zoom is the leader in the business. And they proclaim make meetings more meaningful. Right? So how is Zoom thinking about AR and VR for collaboration?
Yeah, that's a good question, Vijay. I think these two companies are pioneer in their own space, and then they are coming together, trying to create a synergetic value creation for our consumer space as well as for the enterprise spaces. And help you explain this way. Think of this hybrid world when people are coming both in offices, few people remotely. How do we create an immersive experience and inclusive experiences where the quality of experience is no different whether you are in a room or you are at home? And that's where the intersection of two best of the breed providers in terms of the collaboration softwares and in terms of the devices comes together. And we have done it at other circumstances also. If you look at it like a year ago or something, we launched in Tesla car an experience for accessing seamlessly using the devices and the camera in the car to attend the meeting, right? Think of on a larger scale, we are doing this partnership to do that. And key thing about is not just the product, the basic core values of these two companies, if you look at it, Zoom's products are experience driven. We were differentiator in meeting experience compared to our competitions. Apple is always cares about the customer experience. So there is a value level synergies also. We care about Bass little bit touched around experience design. These two companies care about experience designs. So that's a natural partnership between us. Also, one more point, right from our CEO, we use the language of customer happiness. And Apple is all about, we don't use the word delight, but customer is happiness and delight is also very critical for Apple. So on these two terms, if you look at it broadly, two best of the breed players coming, adding synergetic value, creating an inclusive hybrid experience, and the core values of the companies are aligned. So there would be a lot of magic people will experience, just like any Apple product launch. Post GA, let people realize what the experience is versus we talking about now.
Yeah, it's very interesting how the user experience is so central to both Apple's and Zoom's strategy. And I'm delighted to hear that I can now take Zoom calls in my Tesla. So you obviously have many devices that you support over at Zoom, and user experience is so critical. I'm curious how you might be using AI techniques to make that experience delightful for your customers. Generative AI, large language models, for example, are beginning to gain mainstream attention. Many other AI techniques have been around for decades now. What are some of the innovative applications of AI you're using to help with the user experience?
Yeah, Tom, if you look at it, we have been using AI for a very long period of time. If you look at how did we create the differentiation in the meeting experience itself, to start with, the video quality on low bandwidth networks, different kind of network settings, the audio quality, the noise cancellations. Behind all of this stuff is machine learning models, a lot of AI. That has been running for last 4 or 5 years that we created us the differentiation in the marketplace. Now, more recently, if you look at the contact centers that we have, other modules, the products that we have, Zoom virtual agents, intelligent routing, near real time meeting summary, near real time translations. These are complex use cases. Underneath is all AI technologies, all kinds of AI technology. AI is a broad term, right? Machine learning and statistical analysis, LLM. Recently, everybody is now pivoting to Chat GPT, but this is just one of the tools in the broad AI umbrella. Now, some of the tools we have that's heavily leveraging the large language models, particularly if you look at Zoom IQ. As all our conversations are digital these days, there is an opportunity to do conversational analytics on top of it, sentiment analysis on top of it. And we have created something called Zoom IQ because we have underlying data of these digital interactions amongst us. And that is leveraging both quantitative side of AI, which I call like ML, and then the qualitative side of conversations. And this is also underneath this ML model though. And we're bringing this together. So across our product groups now, we have been using AI in the past. Now we added and augmented with LLM. So we are talking about employee collaborations and the customer collaborations, where AI is not an add-on or bolt-on thing, it's embedded as a fabric inside it horizontally. So that's our positioning. And we had a hard internal conversations around how do we go about this from a technology architecture perspective. And we have taken an approach where we are going with the hybrid and federated AI strategy. And I'll explain very quickly what we mean by that. So we are leveraging our proprietary AI models. We are also have a potential to leverage any open source public data like ChatGPT or others models. We have got into alliance with a third party partners like Anthropic. We have made investments in them, and we are giving customer a choice to leverage their own model to augment with us. So it's an open, flexible architecture that not locks the customer into one approach because these things will evolve and we want to go with the flexibility. So we are calling this as a federated architecture for AI ML. So in nutshell, our product had been using AI for long. We have doubled down on this effort. It's now embedded as a fabric across our product lines. And then we have now right technical architecture to support evolving marketplace as we go into this.
That's interesting what you said about federated architecture, that you don't want lock-in and you give people the freedom to plug in their own models, and these models are rapidly evolving. So it's very interesting.
And very contextualized as well, right? So
Yeah.
same Zoom IQ could be deployed in healthcare versus financial client relationship with the wealth management people, and so many contexts. So then it could be optimized for that vertical with augmentation.
I want to ask a follow-on question. I think everybody on the planet now knows Zoom because of the COVID pandemic. You have young children who can connect to Zoom even more easily than our parents now. It's become so embedded in everybody's lives. And Zoom, of course, has become a noun and a verb in popular culture. Education has driven a lot of new requirements. And one of the ones that I, as a parent, heard a lot about is like, how do you make sure the kids are engaged when the teachers don't even know how to teach online yet? And we hear about, all hands meetings in a corporate setting now where business leaders can track engagement of their employees during the meetings. How have you applied AI to kind of solve some of these new emerging requirements that, just obviously popped up and became so vital to how we do business or how we interact in collaborating in kind of this new normal?
I think this is for our engineering team, possibilities are immense. Technology already exists. It's a question of whether we prioritize from a backlog perspective, if you look at it, right? It's huge for abstracting, and we are partly doing it for sales. So when you are on a sales call, Zoom IQ, we are developing this this kind of insight and giving that how was the pitch customer feel like, engaged or not engaged, and what is my peer group, other sales reps are doing, why that call was successful, why that transaction was successful. Whether I listen to you, I didn't ask any questions. If I'm a customer, this means I'm kind of either not coming across or I'm disengaged and I just give you a time, right? Or if I ask you too many questions or all tone of the questions was critical, I'm just trying to find a reason to sort you down, or why I should not move forward with you, right? There's a lot can be done, right? Now, I think that's where the next wave of automation is coming. It's going to be, nobody will be talking as separate AI, ML kind of stuff. It will be embedded. It's the automation 2.0 or 3.0, whatever you want to call it. Just like we had in, what is that now, Industrial Revolution 4.0, something like that. That's we are at cusp of this. I can feel that, Bask, you may sense it this way. It will take time to evolve, these things takes time. I'll have a concrete example. 1998, 99.com came up, right? E-commerce came up. Till pandemic, brick and mortar companies were shifting from their on-prem to a 20-year cycle. 20-year cycle took to become mainstream. Takes time.
The only thing I would, Tom, is an interesting question. The only thing I'm saying is, I'm truly convinced, it took me all this time to realize, I'm truly convinced, the skills I developed were in high school because I had a few good teachers. It's not my master's, it's not my PhD, it's not my whatever. It's a lot of it is high school. The way you come across the soft skills, your English skills, the language skills. Unfortunately, those teachers are not recognized and not paid well, and they're doing a lot of non-value added job, grading people, checking if people is paying attention, and so on. So I am bullish on AI. I'm not scared. I have a feeling we still do a lot of things we don't like to do, right? And these teachers are doing a lot of work that has got nothing to do with what they went to school for and their passion. I think AI can take care of all of that. Take the mundane things out on people, whatever. So they could focus their passion. And I'm still an idealist. I don't think AI is going to have the passion to have that thing that the teacher can teach. That's a spark in you to say, I'm going to study math, right? So we all know that story where some teacher inspired you to do something and they're getting paid nothing. In any country, this is the universal truth, because nobody gets paid. And they're doing like really awful stuff, right? Instead of teaching. So I think things like Zoom made it interesting, right? I mean, I remember my sister as a teacher, she said, oh, thank God I can connect in a so quickly and not worry about if my microphone set up, camera set up, this set up. He's not gone to school to do all. He wants to click a button on his phone and start talking, right? But there's still a lot of things that she does now, I'm sure, that are useless. So I think the promise of AI is removing mind-numbing jobs that all of us do, so we can work on what is truly our passion, what we were actually put on the earth to do. So I'm pretty optimistic about it.
I love how you stated that. So we can all focus on our passions and let's automate all the mundane things that we hate doing. And especially for teachers who are so undervalued, but so critical to our development as a society. So that's fantastic perspective.
Bask, I'm sure you're seeing this a lot. Every company, CIOs, CDOs, they're tasked with coming up with the generative AI initiative. I mean, that's the charter. Everybody is waking up to this and realizing there's a lot of potential, and they know they need to do something, but they don't know what. Where do we start? Right? This is big. We have to get into this. Our competitors can disrupt us if we don't get into it. But where do I start? So, what would be your advice to a C-level exec at a large company that is tasked with coming up with a strategy around generative AI?
So I lost my bet already. My wife told me, can you do one podcast, one meeting without mentioning ChatGPT? I lost it. In the first 5 minutes of the conversation, we've lost the bet. There's so much buzz, right? So, but the problem is at this stage, the buzz is coming from at a board level, at the CEO level, right? So they are asking the question you're asking me is, what are we doing with generative AI? Now that they kind of use the consumer version of ChatGPT, so they're asking the question. Unfortunately, a lot of I'm advising a few CIOs, but a lot of the CIOs are on a wait and see attitude, which is a mistake with this tech, right? They're waiting to see what other use cases can people do, and a lot of them are just answering. The board requests them to say, "What are you doing with ChatGPT?" and they write a white paper, which is kind of regurgitation of what other companies are doing. Every use case is that we can do customer service, we can do this, whatever. What the board now wants is actual projects that they can work in place and some practical experiments to do. So, I'm actually advising the CXOs and CEOs more or less to say, go ask them what they're doing today. Don't ask them for a white paper or what they'll do tomorrow. Because if they're not doing something today, even if it's wrong, right? If they're doing some silly experiments now, those are the CIOs, CTOs, and people you should bet on. Not the folks who give you a white paper on it, because we don't know. Listen, we all have worked in AI. I just, somebody reminded me, my wife reminded me, we both did the thesis on AI 30 years ago. And, so AI has been around, but we couldn't make these simple things. We couldn't do natural language processing. We couldn't tell the computer to differentiate between Larry Bird and Larry the Bird. It got confused. We wrote the worst programs and we struggled. We actually got divorced even before we got married because of the project in AI. So the issue now is, though, and we always thought that neural networks was kind of a bogus thing, right? We all of us felt like, unless you have logic, how can you program some computer to do it? What is scary for me is this actually seems to work. You feed it a bunch of data, and this thing seems to have a mind of its own, if you will, right? The academics are going to freak out if they hear this, but to me, it feels like, what is the logic? How did you figure it out? I just fed you a bunch of data. So the best thing to do for CIOs is to not be so pragmatic and wait till this wave goes, and do some experiments. Set up a structure where you can take some chances. We call it credo typing. We used to do that in VMware and Zoom. A lot of folks are doing it. Try something, see where it goes, and then, come up with those use cases that makes relevance to your business, rather than doing it into an ERP project. This is not an ERP project. This is, you need to change your culture structure to be more experimental. That's one. The second is, I'm thinking, are CIOs the right people to lead it anyway? There may be a few CIOs and CTOs who have the charter and the vision to lead it, but I think your business leaders are going to take it over. The marketing folks are going to say, why am I having a call center set up overseas, doing accent training to save a few dollars, when I can do it intelligent, right? And I don't know if you guys saw the viral video from Tesla on their call centers where, the robot is calling. It looks like a normal person and asking you about their experience and what cars they're buying and kind of leading them, ending up with scheduling a test drive, right? And that is done completely. And it looks to me like this person doesn't know he's talking to a robot, right? I mean, so those are the kind of things you should experiment and should make some failures quickly and then move on. So that's the challenge, is how many of the CIOs and CTOs are taking the risks, and B, they have to start some of the projects, so ERP projects and sales projects and other kind of projects. They have to stop, because you don't know where the future is headed. There's no point trying to do some big enterprise project right now and missing out the immediate opportunity.
So, Bask, if you tell a data leader specifically that you have to start somewhere, there's often questions around data quality. We don't have our data quality story and governance and all that stuff in place. And once we have that, then we'll start these new initiatives. What would you say to those folks?
I can be very blunt. Avinash is going to be a little bit more polished, so wait for his answer as well. But my thing is, every company you go, you hire somebody and say, hey, we're not able to get quality data on customers. We don't know which salesman is selling where. And they start out with our master data quality is terrible. So they go into a process of, let's clean a product master, customer master, that becomes a 100-year project. And then they clean that project and then the person leaves. The next data officer comes in and they start the same project. Let's clean up the data. And salespeople and business people are dying. But they are making decisions with spreadsheets and whatever information they could get or download certain information, they can't really implement, right? So the first thing I would do is do something. This is not a multi-year project. And second is, do not throw every term that comes out as a science project. So it used to be data reporting. I need a sales report. Who's my top salesman? That became a data management project. And then became a data science project. Then it's AI ML project. And now it's going to be a generative AI project. And the request from business is still, I need a report to know who my best salespeople are, or where can I sell, where can I put. So I am worried that we will now start rebranding our data scientists as AI ML people, or generative AI ML people. And the focus should be on work with the data you have. There are some nice tools to clean them. I can work with garbage data, but don't wait for this thing to be so perfect and then start your project, because the companies are losing patience with that condition of data in a large company. Now for a real scientific, well thought out, logical answer and politically correct answer, let me turn it over to Avinash.
Now, I'm agreeing with you in a principle, Bask. If you look at it, it's true that there's no perfect state for data. Also, if you look at it, I think the practical approach that you're talking about, trying to make best out of what we have today and incrementally improve. I'm a great proponent. I've seen in industry two things. If you look at B2C data and B2B data, there's a distinct characteristics differences between these two in terms of the data quality. In particularly for B2B data, enterprise businesses, if you look at it, the higher order of the stack they are in terms of the size of the organizations and things like that, you can enrich that data much better with the third-party companies that exist in industry today. But when we go lower down the order, the enrichment, etc., is less effective. Whereas truly from a business sense perspective, if you look at an enterprise market, most of the company make most of the money from the top 2 segment, top 1 segment, top 1,000, top 500 accounts, right? And while there is a whole ocean, cleanup is one big problem. We can dissect the problem from keeping business lens in mind. I think that's a very practical approach. Prototype you discuss in other contexts applies here too, right? Third-party data, you can do machine learning, even data cleaning through machine learning, like identifying the names, which looks like you're matching with transactions. Now there is a technology about graph database, which you may be familiar with that also very deeply. It can look at which exact customer we interacted more and gives more weight onto those customers and ranking and ordering and cleansing and deduping and all that stuff. So the point here is that connecting technology to business outcome, keeping an eye on that and taking an incremental approach. And there is no perfect state. No company of certain size and bigger can say that despite all these investments. So I'm pretty much aligned with you. And then the depending on industry buzzwords that's going on at the moment, and the roles get the same set of skills. The smartest set of people will move from a one job class to another job class and all that stuff. And those would be the leaders in that. So we will look for it. The key thing is I call it like outcome enablers. Identifying top talent who are outcome enablers will deploy whatever the right technology is. And those are the people who do well in their career, make impact in the company, and then move up in the career ladder.
Great. I love the term outcome enablers.
We should advertise this as job outcome enabler.
Yeah, that's a great direction.
Or do something. My job description is, please do something.
Do something.
Like Nike logo, right? Just do it.
I think the law of averages says there are only so many AI specialists in the world. I mean, every one of us are working on AI. I'm going to say 1,000 people who are really doing that groundbreaking work in AI. And the big companies and startup companies such as yourselves are going to grab them, right? So if you look at majority of the companies, it'll be almost impossible to hire really groundbreaking AI folks. But what you can hire is the outcome enabler. People who look and have the intelligence to say, yeah, I know this is what is happening in different companies. Let me have the partnership with the big ones, the Googles, Amazon, etc. And also the emerging companies and do a few experiments that makes relevance to my business. If you wait for NetSpring, other companies to become, a multi-billion-dollar company with millions of customers and so on, you are not going to get the attention of the company that you can get right now. And you can kind of develop the product. I work very successfully even with Zoom. It looks like a giant company, but there have been times when we were able to provide feedback to the company, take chances with the company, and develop it and morph it into a product that makes sense to the enterprise and to Zoom. So one of the things I'm telling people is there's so many startups, so many companies, early stage companies, who have really clever people that large companies may not be able to hire for various reasons, not just compensation. And they're dying to work with you. So just do that. I mean, you don't have to figure it out. Go and give the problem statement to them and say, hey, if you have a data problem, go give it to a few people and see if they can figure it out, and they let the best person win.
So Avinash, switching gears a little bit, let's talk about the modern data stack, big data. Specifically, we're seeing the emergence of cloud data warehouses and data lakes. They're becoming the central repository of data. And, this idea of single source of truth for all enterprise data that's been talked about for years and years, but it's probably becoming more of a reality now with these modern cloud data warehouses. And so obviously there's a lot of advantages in terms of security, consistency, manageability, single source of truth, no copies, privacy and all that kind of stuff. What are you seeing in this trend towards warehouse centricity, and what would you advise data leaders, and how should they be thinking about this approach?
That's true, Vijay. Actually, like if you look at any new generation company, born cloud companies, they are straight going to this architecture. They're putting their data warehousing or sort of lake on one of the hyperscalers. Now, there's a lot of advantage for this. If you look at industry, take a step back 10, 15, 20 years or so. First thing was migration from on-prem to cloud was happening all transactional applications or SaaS applications. Any company, any founders like yourself, you're going to create an idea, you're going to straight go to cloud, one of the hyperscalers, and you're going to build on that. Same thing, CIOs, CTOs, if they're coming up with a new project or new asset they want to build, they will go on cloud. However, the legacy companies are still in the journey of migrating from on-prem to cloud, even on transactional applications. But the advantage on data warehousing being on cloud is on manifold. Any large companies, if you're not on a cloud, then scaling becomes a problem in data warehousing, long-running job, quarter client problems, sales leader asking, where are we landed? Are we landed on target? What we committed to street or not? And then finishing all the jobs who are down into weeds and looking into whether in 24 hours can we finish all the jobs, whether for sales leader or for finance leaders and things like that. Those are things of the past in the cloud. So in the past, people, what they did to solve that scalability problem, they fragmented the data, they created the data marts, and then you have a different problem, latency problem, because these are all different islands now. Now we talk about AI ML. If all the data is together, not only is the latency issue is gone, you can write machine learning model and more parameters and input, more accurate analysis you can do versus if you can have a very little set of data set in your own data marts. So it has a tremendous value in that sense. And I see that as more and more cloud adoption happens on for data warehousing, either on to directly onto hyperscalers, any of the top three hyperscalers have their own certain core analytics solutions. But then there is market also has some couple of really large on top of that stack, custom built, purpose built data warehousing without naming any particular partners in that space. And we work with all of them at Zoom. This trend is powerful, and I see this will continue to happen. It will foster also innovations. If you think of you have to execute a lot of AI ML model in an on-prem solution. So what would have happened? The CIOs and CTOs have to review the security and you have to ship a copy of data to that startup. Now a startup can plug and play in the same way. You just need to give access. It's like logical separations, right? They can be on the same. So power of innovation going to be quite high. And where we are with all AIML we talked about in the front of this call, that will work better on data warehousing on being the cloud. Now, a couple of things, if I project forward, I see convergence happening. So when you have and we are already experimenting to Bask point of view here, prototyping. So for us, we have hyperscalers where our transactional applications, a few of them are hosted. Now we have both one of the hyperscalers, two of the hyperscalers, and also custom built or purpose built their warehousing cloud. And then we are thinking that, hey, these two are not two different islands. You remember in the past, you transact here and you report there. If you look at consumer applications, where is transaction, where is analytics are intertwined in there. It's a smart devices, a smart apps and all. Why enterprises are not smart? They're still talking, I'm going to transact here and then you're going to report over there, right? The cloud native architecture can bridge this gap. So this means I should be able to do that together. And we are experimenting on this. It's totally doable. So great promises along these lines. And I mean, I can keep on talking about the benefits, right? So data marketplace is evolving because whoever the business partners we do business with, their data is also on the same cloud or thing. So you can share the data amongst each other without copying the data, right? So that has another advantage. And my forward looking view on these things is that eventually it will take time in industry. Everybody initially will go on generative AI trying to do it their own, but market consolidation will happen and some sort of model marketplace will evolve. But that's little far down. First is the data marketplace, and then few years down the road, machine learning or LLM model marketplace will evolve where you keep your data. My IP is just on the model and we can operate across this.
That's very interesting. We've talked about data marketplaces quite a bit and application marketplaces. You're talking about like LLM marketplaces, model marketplaces. That's very interesting. You talked about experience, how customer experience is so core, customer delight that is so core to success of Zoom and Apple. I mean, obviously, to deliver on that kind of great experience, you have to have a lot of analytics. You have to have a really, really good pulse on every interaction that you have with the customer, both in product and out of product. And so data analytics is a powerful weapon particularly for product-led companies where you have to have a really, really deep understanding of usage, behavior, to optimize metrics around conversion, engagement, retention, and things like that. And I'm sure Zoom is doing a lot in this area. What's your advice for analytics leaders in product-led companies? What should they do to achieve the same level of customer delight and customer experience that Zoom has been able to achieve?
I think, Vijay, you touched a little bit around customer experience. We are a subscription business, and in subscription business, you have to really closely follow the life cycle of customers. And it's an infinity loop, right? Even existing customers, you may be looking at feature adoptions, you may be looking at churn, you may be looking at how we can create more value, make them aware about the new products and offering coming together. And internally, for the sales department, marketing department, or customer support department, providing the insight, both coming from product. Basically, with this cloud architecture, we have an ability to look at product telemetry data as well as business transaction data and intersecting them. The magic is the real insights are when we intersect these two data, join these two data, and do a cohort analysis. Cohort analysis at product level, at segment level, particularly for large enterprise companies our size and bigger. We'll have customer segmentation. Will have some flavors so and geo dimensions or other dimensions. Once we connect the data around product and then customer life cycle from business transactions, it could be slice and dice from many different perspectives, and that's where the insights comes. But goes one step further. What the new architecture allows is sometimes those insights doesn't have to reside just in a reports. It could be fed through API-led approach into transacting application. In the past reporting or traditional BI analytics, you can't even update a single record from you can only read. It's a read-only view. Gone are those days. Now these are bi-directional. You can take action in the platform where the action is supposed to be taken. And that's where I was talking about the convergence piece. Particularly, this convergence is needed in the demand gen to cash lifecycle for the businesses. That's where the money is. That's where most of the value creation for the internally is. Externally is from a customer experience perspective, whether I'm marketing customers, whether we are post-sales experiences being delivered, in-product experiences being delivered, right? All this capturing in a very digitized way.
Very interesting what you said about the real insight is at the intersection of product data and business data, right? And then the ability to feed that back is very critical.
So I think with subscription model, that real time becomes critical. There's no time for copying data, processing data, fixing it. I mean, you should do that, but you do it all at real time speed, more or less. And then also, you're migrating from tools now. You're not dependent. I think Awinash said that you're not locked into one tool. Sometimes in enterprises, you're locked into one data warehouse or tool because it's impossible in a system that is running to migrate to another tool. It's just impossible because by the time you do the migration and move the data has been updated in the production system and you don't have time. So a lot of people just sit with legacy systems because they cannot migrate. Right. So I think it's real-time processing, doing it cleverly with clever architecture, not copying data, all this stuff. And there are a lot of interesting companies that are doing all this. And a ton of companies doing in consumer space, right? I bet Netflix is following me and saying, hey, this guy is not clicking on this content for the last week. He's going to Prime. Maybe it's time to refresh the content or show something else for him because I'm going to drop this subscription, right? And come back 2 months later. It's not a fight. It's just that I don't see anything you do. So let me get out of here and come back when you have something interesting to show. So I think the ability to track all those in real time with the subscription model becomes extremely critical. So I think that is the urgency for data.
Hey, Bask, you said something, if I may add to that, very interesting. I'm personally inspired by looking at some of the innovative thing in consumer space and then trying to bring to enterprise. Enterprise is a slow-moving things and all that stuff, but disruptive work happened in consumer space. Even there, like I talked earlier about convergence of transactional and analytics is already done in any single sticky consumer applications or interfaces. It's already done. Enterprises will take several years to get there, where you have a seamless access to this and insights and action together, right? But that's one of the thing is to look at where to look for these things.
I know. We talked about this. There's no such thing as B2B, in my opinion, because it's always B2C. Because the consumer, imagine, I am now looking at all the bad systems I deployed. Now as my own company, I'm looking at working with all those large corporations with their back office billing and invoicing and processing. And I'm thinking how bad these are, right? So I'm looking at modern systems by consumer systems, and I'm looking at these systems logging on to their legacy, whatever ERP, whatever systems to just get paid or invoiced. I'm thinking I'm frustrated, right? Because I'm a consumer. Even though I'm a B2B person, how long does it take to upload an invoice? What is going on here, right? So I think the less we consider ourselves, all of us are consumer business, and you look at it that way because a consumer is using it, and the consumer is using consumer tools every day, and the younger ones, the next generation of folks, are going to be confused. It's like I'm using an iPhone to do all my work, but I go to a company and they give me a BlackBerry or something like that, right? It's like you can't. It's all consumer. It's all experience. And the Netflix, the Zooms, the Tesla, all these guys have set a standard for experience. And you cannot give any excuses. You can't say I'm not a B2C, I don't have the resources, I don't have the funding, I don't have the focus. Guess what? That's what they're all expecting, an iPhone-like experience when they go use your car.
It's very true. The decision makers are now coming from a generations who didn't flip the page of the book, but they flip the swipe the iPad. That generation are becoming now decision makers. What would the base assumption for experience for them is very different.
Yeah, I think what you guys have demonstrated here is that you're CIOs who are very connected into the business requirements, what the business users need. And so I thought maybe we could end this conversation and discussion with you each sharing a call to action for data leaders. And let's leverage your 40 years plus of combined experience as CIOs and leave our audience with some actionable insights they can take into their own businesses. Let's start with you, Bask.
Let me start off, give you a few things. First is focus on business outcomes. I think Avinash said that is, and deliver something. It's always good to take a few singles and you get a home run. So don't start with, let me do the AI, ML, regenerative, chat, GPT, whatever. If it'll happen, do it quietly, do the experiment, but start with delivering some value today, in 30 days. And then start doing some experimentation on all these new systems today. And it is subscription model, so your risks are very low. If you don't like the company, you pay whatever, you can get out next month. So it's not like how we used to do with huge capital budgets and so on. So that is one. Don't be too pragmatic. Do dogmatic. Don't be afraid to take a few risks. The second thing I would say is perhaps it's time to break up this IT and data. We keep talking about decentralizing data. So the data architects, the data chiefs should look at more like mentors rather than command and control. It's like you give me all the data and any data comes to me and I control the warehouse. Seems to be one approach. That has to just enable the freedom so that the sales folks can do what they want to do. Don't try to solve all the problems for them. Just fundamentally create some bridges for them that they could do their jobs easily and take care of information security, access, whatever, but just decentralize that. Have decentralized data chiefs. Every department needs a data expert. So I think it's perhaps time to look at the structure and divide that. And the third thing I would say is the organizational boundaries are getting into the way in a lot of enterprises. And it's largely because we've created too many C-suite jobs. Previously there was one person you go to get your IT or technology. That used to be a CIO or CTO, or I used to be called the head of IT or geek or something. It wasn't even the title. The minute you create this officer position, it creates fiefdom between a CISO, a CDO, a chief data officer, chief CIO, and you're fighting internal battles. And the businesses are just going to go do whatever the heck they want. So perhaps structurally, we have to kind of try to bring it together. I mean, you don't have 5 CFOs reporting on finances of the company. You don't have 10 HR people. And you don't want the CEO, you don't want Vijay to be talking to 8 people to figure out what to do with this strategy on data. So I think it's perhaps time to look at it, either collaboratively work together or structurally work together, because a lot of companies, that becomes a problematic and political environment.
That's fascinating. All right, Awinash.
On the same question, I share some of the viewpoint that Bass shared, and I mentioned upfront. And I'm very personally big believer into outcome-led technology solve. So, what problem we're trying to solve? What are the company level top objectives and goals are? And then figure out what's the right technology is to go and solve. We should not be on a small experimental basis. We can see that where can we use LLM or ML for solving problems or experimenting. But big bets are always business outcome to technology driven versus technology to business outcome driven. So that is always keeping in mind. And not just for CDOs or CIOs, but cascading that mindset down in the organization is very important. If you want to build an organization that is outcome led, it shouldn't be just with the leader's job. Every engineers, every product manager should have a line of thinking between what they're doing, how the top level outcome is enabling. That's internally in management terms is also about org alignment, right? Across the objective. That's one thing. Um, Second thing is the federated approach, kind of a different way of what Vask said about that freeing up the data. There's an industry term about freeing up the data. You look at the KPIs. If you look at most of the large industry, whether the sales or marketing and all, there is a standard set of KPIs that everybody tracks, should be tracking. And there are some unique KPIs for that company because each large successful company will have some unique value prop. What is the unique thing with that company? But the problem is everybody starts from a scratch. If you have to run the sales, there is standard metrics for sales, a standard metrics for finance, a standard metrics for retention in HR, legal. Companies reinvent the wheel a lot. We becomes bottom up reporting that, hey, I need this report, this field, and things like that. Why don't we align on the corporate objective and start from what are the right KPIs our leaders are being measured on? How are we measuring the health of the business? And then go down from this, like inverted thinking right now we have. And it's a bottom up report building, the demand coming. Hey, now executive ask for, hey, this doesn't number match. We start top down that way. It will be much faster. And we don't have, in many look at any large company, you will have a report proliferations because of the bottom up thinking there. Sometimes top down thinkings make more sense. In this case, standardizing on KPI, I think is a low hanging fruit in industry. And then only 10 to 20% of the variations you can do that based on the unique value prop that your company is doing or unique customer situations that you have. These two things I will say. And the third piece is data savviness is everybody will need these days. Go forward as AI ML becomes mainstream, even for business decision maker. Ideally, a good business decision makers are balances between the qualitative judgment call and quantitative data set to balance this out, right? And equivalent of this in data is coming as a machine learning on one side and qualitative input synthesis through the generative AI, and these two fields will converge. So those are the couple of advice: outcome driven, inverted KPI led driven analytics, and analytics driving the business, bottom ups, like reporting driving the bottom ups, and innovation culture, prototyping, etc. Past already covered about.
I think the biggest thing for me was two things. One, this idea of customer experience, obsessing about customer experience, whether it's Zoom or Apple. Some of these super successful brands have been successful primarily because they've obsessed about experience. Every little detail of the application, the device, there's been obsessiveness. And I think that's increasingly important because, like what these guys were saying, the same kind of expectation is now set in enterprise too. What people are used to in consumer products, there's a whole generation that's expecting that in every product, whether it's consumer or enterprise. And so that puts a really high bar, and everybody should be thinking of experience the same way as Apple does or Zoom does.
Yeah. And I think that mindset of finding innovation and kind of crossing over from B2C to B2B, the convergence is obviously there. My other takeaway was this idea that, you can never solve data quality. You're always going to be chasing data quality. And in this subscription economy, that kind of makes it very real, right? The risk is low to try new technologies. And, we didn't, like, as a CIO for, 20 plus years, it was a very different world 20 years ago when you're buying on-prem software. It was a major investment. You're making a big bet on a vendor and you're building entire teams and organizations around that. But in the subscription economy with SaaS technologies, a startup, betting on a startup isn't a massive risk. And that's where you're going to get your your biggest opportunities for a step function in your business. And I thought that was a very valuable advice to CIOs who are looking at new technologies, especially as new initiatives arise. I think generative AI is a perfect example of that right now. Like everybody's got to make an investment in there. Everybody who's in it is a startup, but it's very low risk to stand up new initiatives around.
Yeah, perfect is the enemy of good, right? Get started somewhere, don't wait for the perfect solution. And the cloud architectures make it much easier that you can plop in different analytics tools that work off your central data warehouse, and the risk is low. You can give it a try, and it's not a very heavy lift like some of the larger enterprise projects. So that was great insight. The other thing around insights and analytics, what Awinash said about the key insights come from the intersection of product data and business data. And that's obviously very dear to what we talk about at NetSpring. It was great to see that reinforced by him that, if you the high value insights do not come from just the product data. It comes when you intersect that product data with business data. And that's where you can make business impactful analytics work.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Bask and Awinash. It was a real pleasure chatting with you both. That concludes today's show. Thank you for joining us, and feel free to reach out to Vijay or I on LinkedIn or Twitter with any questions or suggested topics for the future. So until next time, goodbye.